All right, so we are streaming live now, I believe, in our group. Let me make this the speaker view. Welcome everyone, this is Sarabjeet. You guys are either watching me on Facebook or YouTube, and this is the time, about 30 minutes to 40 minutes, that I've carved out for you guys for any questions you may have, as this is not a scripted session, there's no agenda. This is purely just for you guys to ask me any questions you may have within business analysis, Scrum Master, or even project management, because those are the areas that I've got tons and tons of experience. So if you have any questions, let us know. Kalma is my dear friend who's going to help me moderate this session. So with that, let's get started. Let me know if you guys have any questions for me. All right, go ahead.
Okay, I want to ask the question. Name's Jeremy. I had a recent interview, a BA IT business analyst interview, and I was asked about user-centered design. And actually, I didn't even have a clue about it, though I just managed to say one or two things about it. But that was the first time I was ever hearing about user-centered design. So really, what's the role of a BA in user-centered design?
So user-centric design is something that is popping up lots and lots more recently, right? So do you know if it was an agile environment or a waterfall environment? Were you able to identify that?
Yes, it was an agile environment.
Right. So in the agile environment, you know that we write user stories from a user-centric standpoint, right? As a user, I want X, right? So that's also where we have more insight or more attention to how is the behavior going to be for the user. Oftentimes on agile projects, we have UX designers on the team with us, right, as Scrum Masters or business analysts, to give us that capability. So it just means that we have to pay attention to how the users are going to be using that functionality and interacting with that functionality. So the focus is more on the user versus the systems, which is what we've done primarily most of the time in Waterfall. So how could you have answered that question? You could say that we work very closely with our UX designers to make sure that we are mindful of the functionality that we're building, and also, work with our UX designers to make sure that it's something that, would be easy for our users to interact with. Does that make sense, Jeremy?
Yeah, it does. I was confusing it with, use case diagram. So I just twisted everything out.
Use case diagrams are different, right? Use case diagrams are something that we use. So there's two different types of use case diagrams, right? And I think lots of people get confused with different types of use case diagram. The first one is used at the beginning of the project, high level, to understand what functionality, what features, and how those features are going to be interacting with the users. So you may have primary users and you may have secondary users. And the second type of use case, tabular format, is used to gather requirements. So that really has nothing to do with user-centric view of gathering requirements or documenting requirements.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Let me make sure. Yeah. Okay, cool. Kalma, you're monitoring that. All right. Any other questions, you guys? This time is for you.
There is, I think Sharma has a question. Sharma, you can go ahead.
Hello, Sarabjeet. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity to give us a chance to ask you. I have seen your couple of videos on YouTube. I would say really, really informative, and it had benefited me always whenever I've seen your videos on YouTube. Actually, my question is regarding the business analysis certification, CBAP, or CCBA. How much is the worth of it if we are applying for jobs? And secondly, if you can just, because as we all are here and we will be continuous, I don't know about others, but I keep on giving interviews whenever I'm switching jobs and all. Would you be able to tell us the most common questions asked in the interview for business analysts and how to respond to the employers so that they may so that we stand out from other BAs or we can outshine. Yeah, these are two of my
So my first question to you is, do you have work experience as a business analyst?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so if you have work experience, then only I would recommend that you go for the CBAP certification. Otherwise, lots of people that don't have the actual experience feel or think that just taking the certification will give them an edge, and it definitely does not do that, right? Because all that exam shows interviewers is that you took an exam, because most of the interview is based on your experience, what you've done on your projects, and how you've handled yourself as somebody who can gather requirements and implement projects. So if you don't, any of you guys, and this goes to everyone, if you don't actually have the experience, don't waste your time and money sitting for exams, because they don't help you get the job. What helps you get the job is the experience. So now if you do have experience, the most widely asked questions for business analysts are all over Google, right? They're not hidden from anywhere. If you are struggling to get a job, it's because, or if you're, getting interviews and you're not hearing back, it's because you're not providing detailed enough answers on what you've done on your projects. You've got to go in detail and explain, how did you gather requirements from your stakeholders? How did you handle difficult stakeholders? And it can't be 1 or 2 sentence answers, because that sounds made up. Right. So I always tell everybody there's 3 phases of interviewing. The first one is with recruiters. That's where you put a bunch of buzzwords. And if you're not getting past recruiters, you're not putting enough buzzwords. So go put in a bunch of buzzwords, right? The second one is with the hiring manager. Here you have to talk about your project and your project experience, because that's what they're looking for. And unfortunately, there's lots of people trying to get in the industry with that experience. And so hiring managers are cautious, as they should be, because anybody that comes in that's showcasing number of years of experience should actually be able to do the work. And if you're not able to portray that through the interview process, that's probably why you're not making it. So Shama, if you have the experience, I think just go deeper into your answers. I think that would be helpful and beneficial to you.
Okay, and I will be asking a couple of more questions. I will give other people a chance as well, because I have a lot of passion for this job, for being business analyst. I wanted to ask you about that you have been. I have been looking at your Facebook page, and you have been sharing a lot of information about people getting jobs, about 70K, 100K. Are those people are with experiences, or you are how are they getting the jobs?
So within my training program, I am a certified trainer from IIBA. I'm a certified trainer from Scrum Study. I have 15 years of experience, and I do also teach. Both of my programs are endorsed by IIBA. And when they review my program, and what I do in my program is we work on hands-on projects, right? We work on projects that give everybody the experience in not only working on projects, but what they need to do when they show up as a business analyst, right? So what are the primary day-to-day activities of a business analyst? It's eliciting requirements, gathering them, validating them, understanding them, documenting them. And so I take my students through that process of, doing those things. And that's why they can show up to the interviews and talk about what they've actually done on projects, because they have that hands-on experience within my training program. And that's how they're able to land those jobs. There's lots of people training out there. In my program, we don't do like proxy interviews. We don't do any of that stuff. People that are landing jobs are doing it on their own merit and based on the experience that they're getting.
Okay, and I would end up by asking, what are the biggest challenges that are faced by BAs in the market? If you can elaborate on it?
BAs trying to get into their
No,
first position.
the people who are already on the job. Like, what are the biggest challenges that they face?
As a business analyst, I don't know if there's any different challenges that BAs face than you would on a job, on any other job, right? Everything has his every profile, every job, like for example, doctors, right? They deal with like upset patients, for example. As business analysts, most of our interaction is with stakeholders, so there may be difficult stakeholders once in a while, but other than that, it's just personality. I wouldn't say that there's at least from my standpoint, I've been in this industry for 15 years. What are the challenges that I've faced? Just difficult stakeholders sometimes.
Yeah, and also complicated project with complex requirements.
That shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
That's never I mean, that's your job. If you don't know how to do your job well, then
But it can come across as a challenge, won't you agree? Like, if you are having a project with simple features that need to be developed, but all of a sudden you get a feature which there is no information about, and it's like a brand new thing, that can come across a challenge, or you don't.
I can tell you don't have experience, because in this environment, you're never doing this alone. You have your team members, you have your developers, you have your managers, right? This role is never like an individual contributor. Even if, regardless of how complex the project is, you're never doing it alone.
Okay. And another thing, like if a person is a BA and he or she also has Scrum Master certification, and also PMP. So would it be, how is it?
Like I said before, don't waste your time on certifications. They won't get you a job.
No, if you have
Regardless.
experience, like I work, because I have, this is from my real experience. I have worked in a company where they gave me role of a product owner and a Scrum Master as well. I was wearing two different hats in the same company, because they have been introduced to Agile. It was brand new for them. So it can happen that when you're going as a BA, they can ask you to be a Scrum Master as well.
Yeah, that's
But
possible.
yeah. But for future, like if I want to apply for BA job, can I apply simultaneously for both roles, showcasing my same resume, or it has to be tailored?
You can put both roles on your resume. If that's what you've done, if that's your experience, then that's your experience.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Ali. What kind of role does a BA play with DevOps? It was asked in the BA interview, so if you can kindly explain.
So DevOps is where our developers are developing software. So if they're interacting with DevOps, most likely it's an agile environment. And so generally in the agile environment, we don't have business analysts, we generally have Scrum Masters. But again, every environment, every industry is different, every company is different. So if there is a business analyst, I'll put somebody on mute just so we don't have disturbance. So if you are a business analyst interacting with DevOps, most likely it's just for user stories to document and make sure that if your developers need clarifications, that you're getting those clarifications from the business teams or your product owner. That's my answer. We can move on to the next question. Do we have any other questions?
We have a question from Alabi. So it says, how would you advise an introvert to interact with stakeholders?
An introvert?
Yes.
My suggestion with you, I'm an introvert too, right? And I get that it's hard to, get out of your comfort zone and talk to people. as an introvert because that's not your personality. But I mean, if you want to be successful in your job and your profile, this is a role that requires a lot of interaction. So what I personally have done is, in my personal life, I'm an introvert. I don't talk to people if I don't have to, right? That's just my personality. But in the work environment, I try to be very open, very communicative, like very, approachable, because I need to be that person to make sure that I'm gathering the requirements correctly and making sure that things are getting done as they need to. So as an introvert, it may be uncomfortable, but for you to do the job well, you have to reach out to your stakeholders, make sure that they're available for you, make sure that they're able to give you the time that you need to document these things correctly. And lots of times new BAs are afraid to go back and ask for clarifications, and that should never be the case, because anytime your stakeholders see that you're trying to, do your best and you have clarifications, they'll never shy away from helping you. So don't ever feel shy about going back to them for questions or clarifications as needed. So in summary, as an introvert, you still got to go out there and do the best you can. It's the same like dating, right? Like you want to find the best partner that you can, like you got to go out there and date. You got to meet people. You got to see who they are and see if you like their personality. That's no different than the work environment. You want to get a successful project done and you want to make sure you've gathered the requirements, you got to go talk to them. Yeah.
The next question. So how do you deal with difficult stakeholders who are not responsive?
If they're not responsive, as a business analyst and as a Scrum Master, you guys always have your management to look up to. If you tried your best and they just are not responsive, giving you time of the day, if you're a BA, you report that to your PM, and if you're a Scrum Master, you report that to your product owner. And if you are the product owner, as in your case, Shama, then you report that to your leadership, whoever that may be. Because if you're not able to gather requirements, either you need to change your stakeholders, right, to somebody else on the team, on their team, or you need to let your team, your management know that you're not able to gather those requirements, right? We just need to make sure that everybody is on the know. So there will be times where people just won't be responsive to you, and that's okay too. They may just have too much on their plate. Oftentimes I try to give them the benefit of the doubt and try to make sure that it's just not me. I don't waste time in reporting those behaviors, because what that can do, if you waste too much time or don't report it in a timely manner, it could put your project, it could delay your project significantly. So the faster you can report it, the faster these things can be resolved.
Thank you, Sarabji. So now this question, it's in respect to time management in general. So I want to understand from you, like, what are some of the techniques which you use, because you have a full-time job, you mentor students, you have training programs. So is there a time where you feel like things are all over the place, and how do you do to manage all these tasks? Maybe you could share some tips.
Yeah, all the time. I feel like I always have so much on my plate, but that's my personality. I enjoy that. So I use a technique called time blocking, which is, on Mondays, I know that I carve out an hour to do some dedicated work for some area that I'm focused on. On Tuesday, I dedicate another hour on a different area that I'm focused on. So that way, that time is blocked off. I don't look at my phone. I don't, answer any emails. I don't check my email. I just dedicate that time frame, very focused on those areas. So that way I can, get the things that I want to get done. I also I have always like big to-do list, which helps me get down all my thoughts and things that I need to get done. And I use that for work as well. I have different lists for work, different lists for my training program and other things that I do. And that way, if I can put down everything that needs to get done, then seeing the to-do list and then having that time blocked to focus on those areas definitely help me get those things done. So that's what I do personally.
Thank you. So I see Havik's hand up. So Havik, just give a few minutes. I'll take some couple of questions from Facebook and I'll come back to you. So what are some of the good courses for an aspiring product owner in an early career?
Product owner, I don't know. I haven't done any research on product owner courses. And even business analysts, I know there's lots of people training them. I just don't know. Like I don't go do research on other programs. I train as well, but I don't know other training platforms that I would recommend.
All right. So Havik, I see your hand raised. You can go ahead and ask your question. If you could just unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, so my question is regarding user acceptance testing. So in agile environment, when we are coming up with requirements, we do it in terms of user stories. So when we're doing that, we also come up with the acceptance criteria, and that forms the basis for our future user acceptance testing in the agile environment. So my question was, how do we come up with a user acceptance testing in the waterfall model, and is there any difference between in the UAT in like agile and waterfall?
Yeah, so definitely all UAT is derived from requirements, right? So in agile, we're developing those acceptance criteria ahead of time, so that makes it a little bit easier. But even in waterfall, so let's say, for example, if your requirement is the system shall have the capability to do X, Y, and Z, right? So that's where your UAT testing comes from. Is the system able to deliver X, Y, and Z? Right. So that's generally how we get testing criteria for waterfall. How is waterfall and agile UAT testing different? So in waterfall, you're doing all the testing towards the end, right? In agile, we do UAT before release. So you may have different sprints where software or functionality is being delivered. We generally don't do UAT at the end of each sprint. We only do UAT before a release, and it's very similar. So if you are getting stakeholders or a product owner involved for testing, you definitely have like a QA person who has created test scripts to give to our stakeholders to test. So they can stakeholders can use test scripts that are created by our QA folks, or they could just do ad hoc testing based on the functionality that's been delivered. So there's many different ways that stakeholders do UAT, but generally from our standpoint, business analyst, Scrum Master, we always have test scripts to give to our users for them to use if they want to. Bhavik, does that answer your question?
Yes, that does. I have two questions as well. So is there any resource where we can find a case studies to practice?
Practice what?
Case studies.
Yeah, on my YouTube channel, I've done a couple of case studies on my YouTube channel, so you can go find those on there.
Okay. And I have a last question. The question is way too convoluted, so I apologize in advance. But so this is from a perspective of a product manager. So in agile environment, when we are coming up with user stories, those are very much oriented towards a user's experience. So how a user will go through a certain thing. But in those requirements, we are at no point specifying how a system would be built. So when these user stories are transferred to a project manager. So now in terms of like continuing the product backlog and the sprint, the product backlog has the user stories, but we also need to add the task wherein we are setting up the APIs, the data, like the backend things, and like we also have tasks for front end people. Like so, what my question is like, when we are making those tasks, like do those tasks also need to be in terms of a user story, or they can just be an epic called architecture, like something called building up an architecture?
Right.
So
generally, developers are the ones creating those tasks, and they're just for the developers, right? They're not for stakeholders, they're not for the product owner to see. It's just a list of things that developers need to do to complete that user story. And so they don't need to be written in as a user or as a system or whatever. I've seen developers just saying, add, table to the database for X, Y, and Z and merge it or something. So like it doesn't have to be written in the user story format.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so if your questions have been answered, I will kindly request you lower your hands to avoid the confusion. Thank you. I'm gonna take the next question. So it says, what are the tools used and how do we master them?
There are different tools that are used for different roles. For business analyst, business analyst and Scrum Master, we generally use workflow diagrams. We use prototyping. We use in Scrum, we use Jira or some tool like Jira to manage requirements. As a business analyst, we use RTM. So how do you practice them? I think in my case studies, I try to do the best I can to incorporate a lot of the tools that are generally used for business analysts and Scrum Master. So if you haven't seen my case studies on my YouTube channel, I would highly recommend that you do that. Otherwise, try to look at case studies. They're definitely available online, and try to work on it your own. That's the only practice. If you don't have experience or you're not working on a project, it becomes really difficult to practice these tools without a purpose or end goal in mind. So I would recommend going back to my YouTube channel, watching case studies and or trying to do case studies on your own.
Thank you. Jane, I'll take one more question from the chat before I come to you. How important is it to have a good grasp of flowcharts and BPMN swim lanes and diagrams? What if we are struggling nowadays? They are asking for data analysis, Tableau and Power BI. Any free courses on that? So, and how much technical should you be for a senior BA role? So I think
those are lots of questions.
Yeah.
What was the first one?
Yeah, let's break it down. I will start with the first question. How important is it to have a grasp of a flow chart and BPMN swim lanes and diagrams?
Sure. So I think that understanding how to do workflow diagrams is highly critical for this role. BPMN is a little bit complicated. So when in my training program, I don't teach BPMN, I just teach workflow diagramming tools and techniques, because as a business analyst, you need to understand, or a Scrum Master, as you're gathering requirements, it's really important for you to understand how the system needs to work, right? The processes and the approach, and what comes first, what comes second. You can do that and understand that using workflow diagrams. So BPMN is one of the most complicated methods out there. As beginners, I recommend that you just learn how to do workflow diagrams. It's easy to learn. There's maybe 5 or 6 shapes that you need to master. And for practice, just go create a workflow diagram on how to make a cup of coffee, and you will realize how difficult it is. It may look simple, but the more practice that you get, the easier it is for you. And the goal is for you to identify the logical steps that you need to do to make a cup of coffee using workflow diagrams. So that's what I would recommend. How critical is it that you understand? I've so much experience, and I still rely heavily on workflow diagrams to help me understand how systems work. So if you ask me, one of my favorite tools in this industry is workflow diagrams, and I generally still use them. Kamal, what was the second question?
Yeah, for the second part of the question, I think the 2 questions can go together. So the second part, I think she wants to know, for Tableau and Power BI, if you have any recommendations on any free courses, and how technical should you be in order to go for a senior BA role?
So I don't know any courses about Tableau or any of that stuff. That's not been my role. It's not my expertise. So I really don't have any knowledge on those. How much experience do you need to go to a senior business analyst? So it's not that you need technical experience to be a senior business analyst. You need experience on handling projects to be a senior business analyst. So it's not like if you don't know Tableau or SQL, you can't be a senior business analyst. My definition and my understanding or my experience tells me that anybody that's a business analyst is somebody that can gather requirements, can get the work done, but a senior business analyst is the one that will go ahead and establish those relationships, will try to solve the most complex problems, will try to step in and provide guidance to the other business analysts. So it's not about technicality for a senior business analyst, it's about the experience and what you're comfortable in doing. So again, I see senior business analysts leading projects versus just, going in, talking to your stakeholders, documenting requirements. So it's definitely the experience and leadership.
All right, thank you. So Jane, Johan has been helpful. Right now, you have the mic.
Yes. Yeah, hi, thank you. So I'm working on a third-party implementation of a workforce management system. So I joined the project in Fly, and the business are keen on already using the solution that's sort of already been provided. So I've gathered all the requirements, created an as-is to-be workflow diagram, and also I'm sort of using the free trial to test as much as I can. However, the business are worried that so I'm trying to convince them that we need to pay for a pilot in order to test with more users to see if it's actually fit for purpose, so I can only test to an extent. So how do I go about convincing the business that we need to pay for this pilot in order to proceed, even though it may not be fit for purpose, but I can only do so much testing with the free trial?
So from what I understand, they've selected a platform and they want you to test from on the free version of it.
Yes.
And you
but
want
it has its limitations.
Okay.
So what do you want?
So in that scenario, I would create a spreadsheet of the functionality they want you to test, and identify the things that you are able to test with the free version and the functionality that you are not able to with the free version, and show them that, hey, like if you want me to test these items, then we need to get the paid version. Otherwise, I'm done with my testing efforts.
Okay. Right. And then what if you do we go ahead and do pay for it, and then it doesn't go to plan? In this scenario of them wanting to implement the workforce management system, would I now have to go to try and find another vendor?
I'm having a really hard time understanding you, so I'm going to repeat what I think I heard you say, which is if you pay for the paid version and it still doesn't meet the requirements. So is this a private company, or is this what kind of company do you work for?
It's a private company, car parking company. So it's a workforce management system for parking attendants, for operations teams.
So generally big companies, they can't just go pick vendors. They have to put like an RFP process in place. They have to have procurement in place. So if you guys have not done that, and it sounds like you guys, may or may not, I'm not sure, but if you go ahead with the paid version and it still doesn't meet the requirements, you can move on to other tools, but make sure that you're using the proper procurement tools and techniques that you need to, so you don't get in trouble. Because if it's a private company, then it should be okay for you to just move on to the next tool. But bigger companies, government entities, they definitely have to go through the proper procurement processes, put a bid out for vendors to respond to, and things like that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so thank you, Sarabji. For the purpose of time, we are going to take one more question, and I think this is more of a request, which is something you can do. So someone is suggesting, can you please go through a waterfall methodology case study of creating a BRO and an FRD and upload on the YouTube channel?
I definitely can do that. If you guys can give me a case study to work on, we can work on it together. We could do like weekly sessions like I've done for my other past case studies. but make it easy for me and give me a case study to work on. And I can definitely do one from a BA waterfall standpoint.
Right. Thank you very much, Sarah G. As I mentioned earlier, so we are running against time. Do you have any information which you want to share if someone wants to contact you for any question, which they can do, Sarah G?
Sure. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, reach out. My email address, I'll put it in the chat. If you guys have any questions for me, is hello@itcareers. hello@itcareersforyou.com. And that's another way to connect with me. You guys can go check out my website if you're interested in my training program. You'll find more information on there. But yeah, I'm available. I'm online almost all day, every day. So feel free to connect with me for any questions. And if you have any other questions, put them in our Facebook group. I'm always looking for content ideas. So if you have topics that you'd like me to talk about or do videos on, post them either on this live or post them in our Facebook group, and I can definitely get to you guys and answer some of those questions. Okay. All right, guys, I gotta go take my kids somewhere, so I've got to run for now. Thank you so much for your time. Again, keep those questions coming in. I'm more than happy to provide content and feedback and clarifications for some of those things that may not make sense. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kalma, for helping me out.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you too.
Bye, everyone.
It was amazing having you.
Bye.